Now, the psalmist reminds us of the foundation of our faith tradition. It's from Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. There are so many reasons for us to love God. The mountains will shake in the heart of the sea. The earth will change. God knows this. The psalmist knows this. There are no promises of ever calm seas or an unchanging world. Hardly. It's never the promise. The promise is that God loves us in the midst of a world that is in constant change. This is not the promise of a changeless life. Jesus knows this, and he knows the risks that the Pharisees are taking, the possible mistake that they're making in the way that they live. You see, they run the risk of believing in an illusion and the fantasy that they can somehow keep change at bay. And who can blame them? I mean, everything around them is chaos. Rome is there. There's disease, poverty, starvation, slavery. Their way of life is threatened at every turn. They're a lot like us, you know. Perhaps if we can control that one thing, whatever it is, the rest of the world will fall into place. No chaos, no pain. But the psalmist and Jesus know better. They know the realities in which we live, and they have no real desire to sugarcoat anything. The nations are in an uproar. The kingdoms totter and the earth melts. It should sound very familiar to us. But it's also, I think, when a lot of us would think that something like common sense would step in, where God would give us an answer of some kind, something direct perhaps, something to make us feel better perhaps. You know, build a high wall around your city, says God, or install a radar system, says God. Build more missiles, says God. No, orchestrate the takeover of an economic adversary. Nope. No. God says, no, says the psalmist, no, says Jesus. Step away from convention. Step away from common sense. We need an uncommon sense. We need a feast of grace. What does God's grace do in the face of war? That's what the psalmist believes. God makes wars to cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow, he shatters the spear. God burns the shields with fire. We always have a choice, says Jesus. God doesn't just show up to Paris Island and cause the place to vanish. No, we always have a choice to participate or not, to participate in the feast of grace or not, to come to the table or not. So what of the Pharisee resides in us still? What ways do we use the beauty of the church, say, as a tool to actually hinder grace, or the benefits of good government, or patriotism, or any kind of ideology or economic theory? We call it reality, we can call it necessity, but what it may really be is fear. We fear who might sit down beside us. We fear what peace might actually mean. We are afraid to come to the table of grace. We are afraid of who we might encounter there. You know, the poor, the impure, God forbid the impolite, or maybe even Jesus. We can live like the Pharisees in a last-ditch effort to control our lives in an attempt to find grace. And that's the incredible irony, as Jesus points out, is that we imprison ourselves. We actually imprison ourselves beyond the reach of grace in the process of trying to secure grace. We are so much like the Pharisees. Two children traditions of a single parent tradition. We have to begin to see that Jesus' warnings to the Pharisees are also warnings to us. And his promises are the same. Whatever it is, You can let it go now. Jesus says you can set it down and you can be free. Free to receive grace. Though the earth should change, the mountains shake, and the seas roar and foam, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Thanks be to God.